Today I'm going to make some tomato sauce. The recipe comes from my buddy Rick Iannucci, and his mom and dad, Sis and Jerry, ran restaurants in Philadelphia for ages. And this is their basic tomato sauce, and it's fantastic. So, I'm going to start with a little bit of pork meat here. It's got a nice marbling and texture to it. You're going to cut it up into little cubes. She uses pork neck bones, but beef or whatever will work. And you don't even have to have the meat. You can do just the tomato base as well. I'm going to put the bone in there. I'm going to cut this into cubes. And it's just a little bit of meat for a little bit of fat and a little bit of flavor. You don't need an awful lot. It's just tomatoes and really good tomatoes. Get the best tomatoes you can find. They are the best for this recipe. They're nice and thick. If they're whole, don't break them up. Leave them in one piece, because if you break them up at the beginning, the seeds will be bitter. So as it's simmering, it'll start falling apart, and that's all you need to do. Just let it simmer, and the tomatoes will break apart naturally. I got the meat all cut up. Doesn't have to be very pretty, just nice and rough. Oil is heating up. Really good glug to coat the bottom of your pan. And might as well cut the carrots now too, because we use carrots in this recipe. And the reason you do that is for a little bit of sweetness in the recipe. And you got baby carrots here, but you can use regular carrots. Just cut them up into chunks. Nothing too small, nothing too big. So there's your three main things. Your tomatoes. That's a big ass can of tomatoes. Meat, carrots, seasoning, a little bit of crushed red peppers. Not a lot, just a little bit. And a little bit of garlic. And at the very end, you're going to be using a little balsamic vinegar and a little salt and pepper. And one secret that I didn't learn about for a while was at the very end, just before you serve it, put a nice big pat of butter on the top and let it melt in. You don't need a lot of garlic in this recipe, just a little bit. And it's from my sister. And it's heritage garlic that she grew in her garden this year. And just going to cut that up. You want the garlic fairly fine. You don't really want to get a big, huge mouthful of garlic in. So one little thing you can do is you put a little bit of kosher salt on the garlic. Take the flat of your knife and grind it up. And that kind of makes it into a paste. The kosher salt, which is actually nicer to cook with than the regular salt, or sea salt's good too, uses it like a sandpaper and abrasive, and it can get nice and mushy. So you got like a little bit of a garlic paste. A little chop, squish, squish, squish. Set that aside. Your carrots. Now in the background, I've got my pot heating up, getting ready to put the meat in it. The oil should be hot by now. Don't want it steaming or smoking, just nice and warm, so medium to medium high, and that's it. And we're going to put the meat into brown. So these tomatoes are from Gary Enzo's down on Beach Street. Very good tomato. These ones are already crushed, so the seeds won't be bitter. But like I said, if they're whole tomatoes, don't crush them up. Let them simmer down. This one's got tomatoes and a little bit of paste in it and a little bit of basil already. So it's a very nice big can, so it's equal to maybe 3 cans of large cans. The meat's browning. I'm just going to check on it, and then we're going to pour the tomatoes in. I couldn't find any fresh basil in the store, but a big bunch of basil tied up with a string and hung in the pot in the sauce and let it cook down. That's the most important part. If you can't find the basil, you can have your stuff that you grew during the summer, whiz it up at the end of the season with some olive oil, press it flat, freeze it. Never oregano. Ever oregano or Italian spices. Just basil and your garlic. You can put a little bit of red chili flakes in. I'm going to put a little pinch in. Later on, you'll season to taste with salt and pepper. And just before the end, like I said, a glug of balsamic vinegar, and before you serve it, that pad of butter on top. Now it's going to simmer for a few hours. If it's not thickening up the way you like, you can add 1 can of tomato paste, but it's going to simmer for at least 2 to 3 hours, minimum, on a low heat, burbling away. So now we've come towards the end of the recipe. I already took the bones out, but you could take the carrots out if they're in big pieces, or you can leave them in. A little bit of nice balsamic. You don't need a lot, a tablespoon or 2, like that. Throw your pat of butter in. I don't know how much that is, it's just a little slice. And since we are in Canada, a little dash of maple syrup. It's not Italian, but fuck it. Give it a good stir. The butter will melt. And the butter, if you're serving this, should be just left on top to melt in nicely. But you got the sweetness from the balsamic. You got a little bit of Canada there. Salty sugar bush. A guy I worked with for years, his family runs a sugar bush, and this is his extra dark maple syrup, which is not found anywhere. Normally, everybody wants the amber, and it's amazing. That's your basic recipe. You can do it without the meat, like I said, or you can add meat later. Slices of sweet Italian sausage is really good too. That's something you could have this put away, frozen, thawed. When you're heating it up, fry up some nice Italian sausage, throw it in, some ground moose. Hamburger. No one in the family's ever had that. The carrots and the basil are the key, along with the pat of butter at the end with the glug of balsamic. So I did add 1 small can of tomato paste. It's creamy, it's rich, it's tomatoey, it's lovely. So remember I said before you serve, a nice little dollop of butter to melt in, and you're gonna let that soak into the top. Stir it around, and that's the final sauce. It's delicious, it's lovely. A little parm, enjoy.
It's a mess.